and it's a privilege to be here today to speak about the clean energy jobs of the future, which are exemplified in this building, you know, the first state-owned LEED Platinum building in the state. And Massachusetts is leading the country right now in clean energy initiatives. And don't make a mistake that clean energy jobs are exactly the fight for the environment that we need. Because for every time we're saving the use of fossil fuels, we're able to reduce the impact on the environment, whether we're degrading forests or mines, coal mining, or air quality or clean water. When we work for clean energy jobs, we are diminishing our dependence on dirty fuels. And it's no clearer to see than we start looking at energy efficient buildings, solar hot water, solar electricity, wind, ocean power. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about that today, to bring home to us here that we can actually have jobs in saving the environment. It's something I've been wanting to do probably my whole life. and so now is a time for me where I actually get to weatherize homes, you know, and save people. I say more cellulose, less oil. And so if we can insulate your homes, we're saving you a lot of money and also saving a lot of CO2 emissions. And I call this the dawn of the clean energy era. I call it the new clean energy era, because we've already done this once in this country. Back in the 70s, you might recall, some of you, that we had an oil embargo where we had to wait on lines to get oil. And we realized that we were no longer the lead producers of oil in the world, and we were dependent on Arab nations. And all of a sudden, costs went up, lines went up, and we realized, well, I'll say the Carter administration realized that we had to break our dependence on fossil fuels. And he embarked on a set of initiatives to bring that about. One of them is where I'm a volunteer site director. Also, is maybe one of my proudest parts of the resume, other than being a father to 3 daughters. One of my favorite things to do is to preserve the oldest solar facility in the country. And it was sponsored by the Carter administration in the late 70s. It's still running today. We are celebrating our 30th anniversary of solar power in America. It's the longest active site in the country. And so that clean energy era started, but for some reason it was disrupted. And we can't, for the sake of the environment and jobs and energy independence, we can't see that initiative fail again. So one of the things that really brings home the clean energy movement are the jobs related to that. And so I'm lecturing on 2 levels here, but I'm going to stick to clean energy jobs for now. So what is clean energy? We know that it's wind, we know that it's solar electric, we know that it's hydro, and we know that it's also geothermal. Now, energy efficiency is also what we call the 5th energy. It's the energy we don't use. So we in the business say efficiency first. You want to design the most efficient buildings you can, like this building, and then you layer in clean energy. For example, here we have geothermal, and Doug Leffer will talk more about that later, if any of you want to come back and hear about the technology in this building. So there's a lot of ways to incorporate clean energy. I'm only going to talk about the technology and not about energy efficiency. But energy efficiency is the first fuel. And I'm going to move on. There'll be a time to ask questions later if you want to talk more about energy efficiency then. So let's look at geothermal. What we know about geothermal is that we have direct sources along the Rocky Mountains right here where you can actually get the steam right out of the earth to run your turbines. There's also geothermal, which is heat pumps. This is a system here. That's what we have here at the school, where these loops run underground and you're extracting thermal energy from the earth. Never goes below, 48 degrees. So you either have heating capacity in the winter or cooling capacity in the summer. Here's an example of a direct power plant. It's supplying 30% of the energy for the Big Island of Puna in Hawaii. And last year, geothermal development installed 500 to 700 megawatts and created 3,000 jobs. Photovoltaics is actually turning light into electricity. And if we took 419 square miles here in New England, that represents 7% of our farmland. We put solar panels on there, we'd have 10% of our electricity needs for the region. So when you think of clean energy, there isn't one silver bullet. You have to find a mix. And this is one way to go about doing that. A large system like this is already in place in Arizona. There's large systems throughout the country. So it's not that it's not possible. These systems are being put up all the time. Unfortunately, they're being put up in Germany, China, and around the world, and we need to start doing it at a greater pace in this country. We created the technology, we have the demand, and now the manufacturing jobs are going overseas and the production is going overseas. We have the capacity, and we should do it here. So if we go forward with creating the, we're talking about 20% of our needs nationally supplied through PV. But we could see a 220,000 job growth in the next 8 years. Last year, there was 100,000 employed in PV, and that's through 1 gigawatt installed. 1 gigawatt installed. If we want to ramp up to install 10 gigawatts a year, we can see a lot of jobs created that way. So we also have wind. That's another great part of the mix if we're going to put together a little smorgasbord of clean energy. The world's largest wind farm is in Texas. It has 0 greenhouse gas emissions. That's a good thing. Here in Salem, Paul might want to talk about that a little later, I don't know. But it was what they call it, one of the dirty dozen, one of the most filthy. That's why I like to talk about clean energy, because it's not producing CO2 emissions. But Salem Power Plant was number 3 in production of, 2,300,000 tons of greenhouse emissions from the coal-fired plant. And that produces 743 megawatts. This produces 735 megawatts. My money's on the wind, more jobs, it's clean energy, and I guess we could go on about that. But I'm against pollution and for clean energy, and this is a great example of that. You know, how many people would rather see wind turbines producing no emissions, or coal plants producing tons of emissions? Thank you for raising your hand. So if we do look at wind development, currently supplies are 2.3% of what we need in America is supplied by wind. There were 30 factories in 2004, now there's 400 factories producing the nacelle, which is this big housing on top of a pole. We could actually turn the auto industry into a wind turbine industry overnight. It's the same mechanics. And we can put factories all through the Rust Belt and start putting up wind turbines throughout the Midwest. They call the Dakotas the Saudi Arabia of wind. We can supply all the electricity needs for America from that one site. There's an issue with transmission, which makes that prohibitive, and it also makes it exciting, because then we can start looking at doing local, regional clean energy projects. The other thing that I'd like to point out is 26% of the new electricity in 2010 was from wind. And that's more than coal and nuclear combined. So when we talk about new capacity, let's do new capacity through wind, or solar, or geothermal. We can do it, make the jobs, do the transition from dependence on fossil fuels to clean energy. Well, this is the reason I think that we need to hammer home the connection between clean energy and the health effects, or the waste stream costs of burning coal. There's a study coming out next week in the New York Annals of Science by Dr. Paul Epstein, And they actually calculated the multiple health and environmental costs related to coal waste stream. The environmental damage related to mining, when you're blowing up mountaintops in West Virginia, and all the residue that occurs. Transporting that coal, unending streams of, freight cars going into our coal plants, and combustion, of course, burning that. They are equating about a $500 billion a year cost to that waste stream impact. And so there's 80,000 coal mining jobs in the country. That equation is just all wrong. There's nothing right about that equation. So when you look at all the solar jobs that we could be creating, or wind jobs, I think it's time to start phasing coal out. We could do that with hydropower. Currently at 7% of the U.S. supply. If we increase to 25% by 2025, that would be 1.5 million jobs. Inland, of course, is rivers. Oceanic is tidal and wave. And there's also something that's fascinating called ocean thermal energy systems, which could create a boom in energy independence. So this is the thing that I want to drive home. The amount of money we support the fossil fuel industry with. Over 90 years, it's been about $500 billion. And last year alone, the fossil fuel industry got $17 billion in subsidies. They're not paying taxes, they're getting $17 billion in subsidies, and renewable energy gets $4 billion. That needs to be flipped around to start spurring the research development of clean energy jobs. So I don't want to dwell too much on that. You could say it's political, but I say it's just common sense. We already have fossil fuel industry completely developed. Our traditional sources are making money hand over fist. I think it's time to explore new clean energy sources and invest in jobs and manufacturing here at home. These are some of the jobs that we might see related to clean energy. And what you'll notice, and what was reiterated at a Green Career Conference just a couple of weeks ago, is that green jobs are the jobs that we already know. We're just doing it applied to clean energy techniques, like in this building. Your plumbers who installed the system, they can do toilets and they can do burners, and they can also do geothermal systems. The thing that's most fascinating to me related to jobs is, if we look at a base case that is no clean energy development, we see a flat line in all of these careers. But if we look at spurring the clean energy growth, we're going to need a lot of accountants right here, and we're going to need a lot of electricians right here. This study was put together by, I think it was in conjunction with the Center for American Progress and the Political Economic Research Institute at UMass Amherst. And that was done about 3 years ago. They looked at what if we did rely more on wind and solar, what kind of jobs would be developed. It's a financial issue, and you need to start leveraging the monies that we do have towards generating electricity in the future. And that's interesting to see how many accountants we need. So you don't have to go out there and get your hands dirty. You can still sit at a desk and do important work. But I like being in the field, so electricians, that's a great thing. So I just want to close with this. One of the speakers at the Green Conference was from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And he had all kinds of really great reports talking about the trends in clean energy. And I would encourage you to go to this website if you're a teacher or you're a job instructor or something of that nature. You're looking at what the careers in the future might be. These are always good reports, and you can find them along any industry lines. I'm encouraging you to look at the clean industry jobs, clean energy industry. There's careers in recycling, careers in green construction, careers in solar power, and careers in wind energy. And you might want to copy that website down. Currently, there are 2.2 million clean energy jobs in the country. It's a very solid sector right now in this very poor economy. I encourage you to go to this website and look at what the Bureau of Labor Statistics say. I think what it comes down to is, you can look at jobs, you can look at the environment, you can look at economic justice, social justice, environmental justice. And what do we want to do about that? What do you want to do about that? What do we want to do about that? What kind of town do we want to live in? What kind of house do we want to live in? What kind of country do we want to live in? And I think it's about developing community. It starts with conversations, and it's great what Barbara did in terms of the sustainability fair, that we can bump into people and talk about some of the things that are going on, and the booths out there are amazing. Everything from honey to other things. But it's community building right there. If you go out there, it's like a little community in itself. And so we also have to make a living at that, and that's why I want to focus on the jobs, because you can make a living at this. So I guess one of the questions is, how do we do well by doing good? We need to support ourselves, but we also need to sustain the environment, the economy, and social justice in general. So I'd like to say that the clean energy future starts now.